So, good morning, everybody. I want to say that, I've been working a lot of hours on my job. I usually work over, like 70 hours a week. So, I kind of told myself, you know what, I really just need a break. And I went to see the drama on Saturday. I really want to say that this is definitely one of the best movies that I've seen in years. And for anybody who loves movies, I always will say that, go to the theaters, watch movies, because sometimes movies are almost like lottery tickets, where sometimes you're going to get this really big banger of a film that's going to change your life forever. And then you're also going to get films that are very well made. You learn a lot as a writer, a cinematographer, a storyteller, and other things like that. Like I learned a lot from this film on good storytelling. And actually, I'm actually thinking about writing a book because of this film. And the drama, and this is a spoilers for everybody. The drama is about Zendaya's character, and her character is Emma, and she's getting engaged to her fiance. And what happens is that they're engaged. They practice for their wedding, and what that means is that they practice dance moves for their wedding. Their wedding means a lot to them, and they're definitely throwing down a lot of money. So what happens is that one night she and her friends go drinking, and when they're drinking, they play this game of revealing their darkest secrets. Somebody reveals that they locked a kid in a closet. Another person reveals that they cyberbullied, and another person um, reveals something that I can't remember. But Zendaya's character reveals that when she was a teenager, she wanted to do a school shooting. She was very premeditated about it, and the reason why she didn't do that was because she was when she fired her dad's rifle. It burst her eardrum, and blood was coming down her ear. That's why she's deaf in 1 year. And then she got rid of the gun, and then she became an activist afterwards. So after that, that's kind of like the denouement of the film. And the denouement means, the falling action, really. And definitely the film, like, follows, how does her friends, one of them being the bridesmaid, and how does her husband to be feel about her after this, dark secret being revealed. So there are a lot of things to talk about this film. I think the first thing that I wanted to say is that as far as it goes, really, the editing is the acting is perfect, and then the editing is like the second strongest thing. Like it should be nominated for best editing, because they do two things. Like they show you what characters are imagining, and then they show you jump cuts, and then they kind of do a lot of like like teasing the audience. Really, like you may hear like gunshots and think that, oh well, it's it's actually gunshots, but then it's something else, really. Like there's definitely, and then there are also a lot of hypothetical cuts, which means that you show what a character is imagining, you show them imagining how things turn out, and other things like that. So it definitely is a loaded film and it's a very good film with how it's edited because it makes you kind of on the edge of your seat, really. I would say that it's actually a multi-genre film, and multi-genre films are movies that go through different genres, and this goes through a little bit of a drama, a dark comedy, a romance, a psychological thriller, and a psychological horror. And I would also even call it a bait and switch, and then also maybe like a psychological thriller, and then also a bait and switch film. Because one of the big controversies of the drama was actually that they really, really, a lot of people who've seen the film have not talked about what this film is about. When critics reviewed this film, they were told don't reveal the secret of Zendaya's character because we want people going into the film and being surprised by it. So it definitely feels a little bit like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Like definitely like the surprises and twists and turns really hold you together, really. But some of it is also a little cliche in a way. This is definitely like another film, and this is very common films where people have something special for them, like a wedding, and it turned into a disaster. That's been a cliche. And then also like film with like a bunch of jump scares, or we gotta jump just to horror or whatever, really. So this is not so this is kind of like a story. This is like almost like a story that's been told a million times, but in a different way, really. So Definitely really good acting, really good editing. Maybe the story could have been a little bit better. And then also too that the ending of the film, I didn't really like it. And I'm gonna get into the themes in just a minute, really. But I think like one of the bad things about the ending is that it's revealed one of the reasons why the bridesmaid gets so mad with Zendaya's character Emma is that her cousin, the bridesmaid's cousin, survived a shooting and she's paralyzed. And the ending of the film, Zendaya's character and her husband, there's some things that happen and they separate and then they get back together and they're having to go out for burgers. Really, like like they kind of said that they would love to do on their wedding night. After everything, they go out for burgers to end the night. Really, I think a stronger ending would be if Zendaya's character met the cousin who was a victim of a shooting, and was and they had a conversation, and the conversation should have been about like how you're gonna live your life after revealing this. What are you gonna do? Like, is there atonement, redemption? What are you gonna do to make up for you wanting to shoot up a school when you were a teenager? Because still, that's even though she didn't carry it out, it's a major sin, really. I think that would have been a more powerful ending. It reminds me of this book that I read called Come Winter. Like, have you ever seen the film Last Summer? It's about like these guys who, the two guys and a girl, like all, like a girl gets raped and it's by this guy, but then his friends, a guy and a girl, hold the legs open really. And then if you read the book Come Winter, it's a sequel to that. And then the whole book, you want to kind of have the rape victim, Rhoda, actually, talk to the guy that raped her, or the guy who raped her actually, meet with Rhoda and talk about what happened and just see how they're going to move forward from that. But then come winter, you hope for it to happen, and then they never reveal. They never have that in the book, really. But it holds you on suspense, like saying, "Oh, well, that would have been the perfect, powerful ending," and that would have been a masterpiece of writing if they did that. But the writer just just teased it, and it never happened, really. But I think that would have been a more powerful ending of the drama if Zendaya's character met the character that was injured in a school shoot that was injured in a shooting. I don't think it was a school shooting, but injured in a shooting and was paralyzed, and they had a conversation about where they're going to take their lives. I think that would have been the right ending, but they didn't go down that direction. But there's a lot of themes about this. Like, I think one of the first themes is about, I think early on, is about double standards in a way, because Zendaya's character want to do a school shooting, and then another character reveals that they cyberbullied somebody into moving away. And then another character reveals that they locked the kid in the closet, and and I think it said it was more than a day it took to find that kid. So honestly, cyberbullying has led people to suicide. Locking people in closets, like what would happen if the kid died of starvation, or they got a heart attack from claustrophobia, or they were smothered, or nobody found them and then they died, really. So it's ultimately kind of like how sometimes when people hear an extreme about somebody else, or they're willing to not look at their own behavior. It reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to Alcohol Anonymous and everybody talks about their issues. And Homer says that he was so desperate for alcohol, he went to a sporting game and was sucking the grass underneath the bleachers, and then he was kicked out because they're like, wow, this person's a really serious alcoholic, really. Like how we kind of have hypocrisy. I think the next thing that's kind of talked about is really, how do we interpret people when we know that they have really dark past, really, because obviously her husband has a mental breakdown. He thinks that she's a psychopath. He's defensive of her. He cheats on another woman. Like, he's just all over the place, really. So it's ultimately, and then when they give a wedding speech, he it falls apart because he's not in control of his emotions, really. So sometimes, when we learn something really bad about somebody, we see them in a different light, really, and it's really just about like how do you move forward from that. Um, and I think the next theme I would kind of would say is vindictiveness, because this movie is definitely really about vindictiveness. Because what happens is that Zendaya's character, they hire a DJ and they lose their temper on her. And then they're like, "Oh, we saw you like doing heroin. You're a drug addict. You're a cunt. Goodbye, really." And then also, one of the bridesmaids is a total bitch, really. Like, in the beginning, she's saying something like, she's mad that she finds out that the character is a school shooter, and then at the end, when the wedding's falling apart, really, she's kind of laughing, guffawing, and watching the disaster happen. So sometimes you meet people who are like that, where they get hurt once, or you strike a chord with them, and they're extremely vindictive. And then also another thing that happens is that one of the characters, he makes out with another character, and then the other character decides to drop her underwear and said, "Okay, you want to fuck me doggy style? Go ahead and fuck me doggy style." But later on, it's revealed that he confesses to that publicly, and then her husband beats up this guy at a party. Really, so it's ultimately like another thing is about vindictiveness, or how people get emotional and things become like a disaster. Really, so it really is also about vindictiveness. Like sometimes we have to let things go, and sometimes when people do some really upsetting things, sometimes you can destroy somebody's day, you can destroy a good memory, or you can destroy somebody's wedding day or something like that because you get in your feelings, really. And I also think that the other theme about it is school shooters. And I think that that's one of the big controversies of the film. Like, do we humanize people who do horrible things? Is it okay to humanize school shooters and other things like that? And I think that my answer is no, but it's important to understand the psychology of it, and it's important to make films like this about consequences. I mean, like, again, American History X is a film that humanizes or makes you understand like why people are racist. But the whole message of the film, the main message of the film, is don't sympathize with racists. Just how hate and anger can really just mess up your life, really. And I think this film is really just about not that feel sorry for a school shooter, feel sorry about somebody's past. It's ultimately saying that, what, we all go through hard things in life. Sometimes we're emotional, sometimes we go through trauma, but sometimes in those hardest moments, we really, really have to keep it together, really. And when we don't keep it together, sometimes we do something horrible that we can't take back, or we reveal that we almost did something really horrible, and then the attempted murder or the attempted doing this horrible thing phase, we still can't take it back, really. It's definitely that's definitely a big part of it. Like, honestly, like I always say, when you people are like, white canvases. Once you do something to somebody, you add a color to it. You add like, a color. You add like a color. You add like a darkness to it. You automatically change it. You can't never erase what you do to somebody. Like once you pour a color into water, it doesn't matter if it's so translucent or whatever. You changed it forever, really. So, it's always important to have that, mentality of, okay, this is like a very hard moment for me, but do I want to leave a trail of bodies? Do I want to leave a trail of damage? And I've been in those situations many, many times in my life. I know that I talked about when I did the 48-hour film project for New Haven, and I had a mental breakdown. I told the audience I struggled with suicidal thoughts, and I got in my emotions. I didn't shut up about it, and I ruined a lot of people's evenings. And I also remember how that gave me trauma for like many, many years. And I also remember how, people, when I was walking away, people were like kind of like really scared of me. And then there's some people like making fun of me because they thought that I was stupid or whatever, or like a mentally challenged person sharing too much. But the point of it is that I was going through a hard time and I shouldn't have done that. Sometimes we don't realize, you know, sometimes we don't realize, um, that what we do, when we're depressed or when we're hurting or when we're sad or when we're just really distraught, really, there's a lot of times where we don't realize how we are that we are in darkness and that we are just not that far away from doing something terrible. Really, like actions do have consequences. People are very very multi-layered, really, and sometimes and as I said, part of being human is understanding that we have evolved enough as a species to understand the difference between right and wrong. Like today's character Emma understands the difference between right and wrong, but still she wanted to be a school shooter, really. And then her husband doesn't know that. Okay, does that make her a psychopath? Does that make her a sociopath? Is her like well, it was a phase or whatever? Is that just you know is that psychop? Is that manipulation, or is that well? Understand that I was wrong. Understand that I was going through a hard time, and the hard time, got me to that point, really. When there obviously is no excuse, really. Bad is bad, really. So it is a really like interesting film about morality, but definitely very very well written and well edited, and something that I would totally recommend people to see.